You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to Packers Weekly Podcast, part of the PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans that just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into national sports media talking points. We're sticking with real football. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason. If y'all would like to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Follow us on all the socials. Subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things all help us out quite a bit. Don't take you very much effort. So good evening to y'all. We're going to start with a few words with our sponsor, or from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at ticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Good evening, Tim. How's it going,
Good evening, Miles. Going good. Excited. We're getting closer. It's dragging, but we're getting close to draft time. I wish it could be here. I think they could have done it 2 weeks ago. There's been enough talk. Like we're getting close.
Yes, sir. Yes, and please excuse my voice this evening. My brother-in-law got married this weekend. Shout out to Dak and his lovely wife, Emily. But their wedding claimed my voice. So got a little tea, little honey. We're cruising. So excuse any squeaks that might happen. But we're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to talk about Zach Tom and what's going on there. I've got my own perspective on this. I think that there's some smoke there. Who are you not drafting? We've been talking an awful lot about who we're drafting. Who are we not drafting now? We're going to get into that. We're going to see here what we think about the QBs finally after all this time. We're going to rank our QBs. We're going to talk about why we're ranking them where we are. And it doesn't matter because the Packers aren't taking any of them, at least not any of the probably top three. So we'll have some fun with that topic. And we have a guest with us tonight again. So I'm going to bring him in here. Coach Marty Jenkins, welcome, sir. Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast.
Thanks for the invite.
Yes, sir. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
I've been coaching football. I actually just added it up today. This coming year will be my 15th season. So
wow,
long time.
Right on, man.
Took a few years off in there, though. Got married, had kids, stuff like that. So, but now back rolling and having fun with it, trying to win a state championship.
Man, get after it. You guys have had some good squads, haven't you? West Appear?
Yep. Yeah, we went to state 2 years ago, but we didn't finish the job.
Oh, so close.
Yep.
Yeah. That'll make you hungry, though, man. And shout out to Marty. We were he was coaching running backs at UWO when I came through and played. So it's been a while now that we've known each other, and glad that I got to know you, man, and glad that you're still here ready to talk some more football, man. The first thing that we have to dive into with Marty here is a very important topic, and it's why do the Bears still suck? You want to lead off with that one?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, going back to 2017, they trade up one spot for number 3 to number 2, take Mitch Trubisky. The 49ers were picking 2 at that time. They clearly are not picking a quarterback. They give up a 3rd and a 4th round. That 3rd round pick ends up being Alvin Kamara. I think they could have used him.
Ouch.
That would hurt. Then they give up on him. 2021, they trade back up to get Justin Fields. From 20 to 11, somehow the Giants only get a 5th round pick for him, which that's mind-boggling to go up 9 spots and only get a 5th round pick.
Unreal.
And now they're moving on from him to Caleb Williams, most likely, who personally I would rather have Justin Fields over.
I've been saying the same thing, man. And at the end of the season, we started talking about it because we knew this was going to be a debate for the Bears fans, and we knew that we were in for a little bit of a leisurely offseason for the Packers fans, relatively speaking. I was worried they were going to stick with Justin Fields. That worried me because you could see him progressing. He's got leadership qualities. He's got talent. But he needed better offensive guidance, in my opinion, better quarterback coaching, and probably just better offensive coordinator play in general. But they weren't that many pieces away. You take the draft capital that they've got, that could have been kind of scary. And instead, they're like, nah, we'll just agree to blow it up and suck again for 5 years.
Yes. It's mind-boggling.
So, yeah, I mean, and we were saying – it doesn't really matter. Like, say Caleb Williams is who they go with, and you can think what you want to think about Caleb Williams, whether he's a generational talent or not. He's a rookie quarterback in the NFL. Like, that's just not a good bet historically, you know. And I didn't see Justin Fields worth panicking on, especially for that price. My goodness, they really hit the eject button on that.
Yeah,
one.
there were signs though, like something was there.
Yeah. No, I've been saying it. So, yeah, I'm glad that they voluntarily blew that thing up. And thank you, Bears fans. I'm glad that y'all still suck. Sorry for what you're going through this offseason, man. It's got to be bad. But, yeah, so other than that, we're going to get into some other stuff here. The first topic is relatively recent. Zach Tom from right tackle to center. Now, I want to say I think that this is fog of war talk for the draft. I don't think that this is real because it's not relevant timing. It's not relevant timing for the topic. For this topic to be relevant, it would have to be right around training camp, maybe mini camp, right? But you don't know who they're going to draft. So I think this is fog of war stuff. Maybe trying to convince somebody that they're going to take a tackle and they're not. Or that they're not going to take a center and they are. So, I don't know. What do you make of this, Tim?
Yeah, I'm with you in a lot of ways with that. Like, so Rob Demoski reported it on the radio show Wilde and Tausch the other day, and he's tuned in. He's been covering the team for a million years, so I don't doubt that he heard something.
Sure.
But when did he hear it? Like, to your point, he might have heard this in training camp last year before Zach Tom played right tackle for the first time all season and was a really good right tackle. So it would have made sense then. If you heard it recently, then again, to your point, like, this is probably the Packers throwing something out there. It's lying season leading up to the draft. Like, they're trying to make people think they're taking a tackle when they really aren't taking a tackle. But also at the same time, I think there probably are people in Green Bay that think he could be a center. I mean, Goody came out and said at one point when he was drafted, they thought his best position would be center. But unless his source is LaFleur or Goody or Stenovich or Luke Buckus, those are the guys that are really going to make the decision. Then I kind of take it like with a grain of salt. Like, maybe at one point when he was drafted, they thought he would be a center. But now that he had a really nice year and he proved, I think, that he's already one of the best right tackles in football, I think it kind of changes your thinking long-term with his best position. Like, yeah, he could go to center and I think be really good, but he's already really good at right tackle. So why mess with that? And I also think, like, let's just see how this plays out. Like, if they do take somebody that's going to play tackle, then okay, you can start looking ahead to moving Zach Tom either next season or in 2025 when Josh Myers' contract's up. But at this point, I don't see a way you could move him or why you would. Like, why mess with something that works really well? And again, he's going to go into a second year as a full-time starter at that position. He should get better. And he was already really good. We saw in the 49ers playoff game when he left in the second half, it really impacted the offense. And they had protection problems after that. So you move him to center, yeah, he's probably an upgrade over Myers, but who's your right tackle? And you're going to rely on a rookie who you hope can play and you hope can play right away. You don't know. So you're weakening right tackle to improve center. And to me, it doesn't make sense. Would the Packers do it? They might, because we've seen how they've moved guys around in the past through different positions. Like, they do it, and they're not scared to do it. Sometimes it works out, and we've seen playoff games that they've lost in the past where it hasn't worked out. So
right,
it's possible. I don't think we should really jump to too many conclusions until, one, we see who they draft, And then 2, how are they going to line up when they start training camp? That'll really tell you something. If it was me, I wouldn't mess with it. Leave him at right tackle and let him start there and lock down that side of the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that, and I wish I could remember. I think it might have been Mike Wall, maybe Mark Tauscher, one of those former Green Bay linemen that is interactive on the socials, made a point about how much centers get paid versus right tackles, and it's about a $6 to $8 million difference. So, it's definitely in the Packers front office, interest to move him to center. But it's definitely in his interest to stay at right tackle, especially if he's going to play as well as he did or even get better. So that's where I don't know that this is something that is even real until training camp comes around. But at that point, you've had the draft, you've had some additional time to sign some free agents, and then you really know what you have. And my thought really is if Tom's getting reps in training camp at center, that's an indictment on Myers, right? Like, he should at least, unless they're going to go, like I said, go off and draft a JPJ, right? Is that his name? The center?
Yeah, from Oregon. Big dude.
One of those type guys, and really just outright make Myers earn the job or say that, hey, man, you're probably kind of on the way out. That's definitely the indictment on him. But if you don't get one of those guys and Zach Tom ends up taking center snaps in training camp, that to me says that you've had a failure in Myers. Marty, what do you think of this? What do you make of the situation?
So, well, first off, I wanted Creed Humphrey over Josh Myers, which we won't even get into that. From my point of view of being a coach, Zach Tom played center at Wake Forest. And you just want your 5 best linemen out there, regardless of what their position technically is. So I would not personally be surprised if Zach Tom ends up at center if he's their best option of being in the best 5 instead of Josh Myers. And Josh Myers struggled mightily last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think if it does come down to that, where Tom is taking snaps at center, I think that's the end of Myers. There's no – at that point, I don't think there's any competition.
Yep.
But, if you get to that point and you need that's where it's like, man, you kind of – it seems like they're willing him to give, like, all right, dude, prove it in this last year here. You hope he gets to that point, because if he doesn't, then it's like, oh, this is bad. This is not good. Like, he's failed somewhere that these guys are ready to push the panic button.
And the Packers are – when they pick linemen, they play multiple positions. It's not you're a left tackle, period.
Right. Yeah. And unless you get the guy that's like a Corey Linsley that hey, came in, locked it down. It's like don't fix it if it's not broke. So
correct. Yep.
Well, so we got a couple of questions here from Shiragi Yanklewitz. Sweet name. A quick one to answer. Do you think the Packers draft a running back? Marty, you want to field that one?
Yeah, I think they need one.
Yeah,
I would say in the 7th round. I don't think there'd be any reason to go higher than that. You can get a decent guy. They just need a body right now, someone to take some reps.
You don't think that they need to invest a little bit more in the future on this one?
You just paid Josh Jacobs. You better feed him.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point. Yeah.
I'm not done with A.J. Dillon yet. I think there's more in the tank. I think this is going to be it for him. Like, you better figure it out.
Yeah.
But there's some late round guys I like. The running back from Memphis, Blake Watson, for example, kind of a little scat back. He would be a nice addition to him.
I saw a stat earlier about him and I think it was Bucky Irving are the only 2 running backs last year to have what was like 500 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards, something like that. Yeah, he would be an interesting one. I do think that the later you get in the draft, there's actually a lot of really interesting running back prospects. I definitely think the Packers draft a running back. I don't know. I think it depends on how they've prioritized the position. because if you could say, hey, go after a Jalen Wright. Now you've got Lightning and Thunder. You got a couple big backs, and then you got your home run speed back. I think that sounds like a fun scenario. I don't know how realistic that is, but when you get like probably 5th round and later, it's going to be interesting because it's not a flashy class at the running back position. It's not, not a lot of star power at the top, but there's depth. There's a lot of guys down there that you got to start thinking about when, like I said, probably the 5th round rolls around, and I'm not even going to try to predict who would be on the board at that point, but there's enough bodies and really good athletes in this draft class for running backs that it'll be worth investing in, I think. So, short answer is yes, I think they do. Tim, any other thoughts on whether they do or not?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think they're taking one, and I wouldn't surprise me if it's on day 2, 2nd or 3rd round. But more than likely, I think probably 3rd day that they take someone there, and it's probably going to be a developmental pick that they don't need to obviously play right away since they're bringing back Dillon to go with Jacobs. But, we didn't expect Dillon back this year, but being on a 1-year deal, probably don't expect him back in 2025. So you need to start developing his replacement to pair with Jacobs in 2025. So yeah, I would think they go running back at some point in the draft.
Yeah.
Before they brought back Dillon, I was really high on Blake Corum on day 2, and I think that ship has now sailed.
Yeah, and he's an older guy too. He's like 23, and you got a couple guys in this class that can't even buy beer yet. So Goot likes them young. But yeah, I do think that he will draft a running back. It's just interesting, the different skill sets. There's some good big backs. There's some good speed backs. And just a lot of different kind of what you value, what do you prioritize. But all right, yeah, let's jump in here. And then what was our other draft topic we were going to get into? Oh yeah, we were going to get into the top 30 or not. Sorry, the 30 visits, not top 30. Can't say top 30 because that doesn't make any sense. Anything standing out to you, Tim, on these 30 visits we've got so far?
Yeah, I mean, more so than the actual players, it's the positions. So the most frequent visitors from positions are offensive tackles and safeties, which probably tells you they're going to draft at those positions. Maybe not those actual players that they're bringing in. I know the safety position, a lot of the guys were 3rd day guys or maybe even undrafted guys. The offensive tackles, you have a mixture of guys who could be 1st round picks. Tyler Guyton, Marius Mims are in there. And then they have some other guys who are probably 3rd day. Zach Sinter's an interesting one from Michigan. He broke his leg, I know, in the Ohio State game. So that was probably a medical thing that they wanted to check on him. But he's played a lot of football at Michigan, been a really good player for them. Now, he's only a guard, so he kind of doesn't fit their tackle to guard, versatility. But if you're getting him on the 3rd day, I think they can kind of look past that and just say, we're going to take a really good football player. And Zinter's probably fits that bill. But yeah, to me, it's just the positions that they've brought in, not necessarily the players. The only player that really stood out to me, and it was just one that was just reported today, is Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan, the edge rusher. I really like him. I think if you look at his testing numbers, his size, he's like 6'3", almost 270. Tested very well. Went to the Senior Bowl. They love Senior Bowl guys. It really fits a lot of Packers thresholds and things that they like to draft. To me, he's a sneaky, early 2nd round pick. That 41st pick, I could see them taking him. If you really want to get crazy, maybe they take him at 25. I think that's a little soon for him, but you never know. But he fits a lot of the, characteristics of edge rushers that they've taken or signed in the past. So he stood out to me, but it's more so like just focusing on what positions. And so far, the heavy positions have been safety and offensive tackle.
Yeah, agreed. The one that stood out to me is somebody I had never heard of, Giovanni Manu, an offensive tackle from Canada. So I don't know. I haven't even tried to pull up film on this guy yet, but we'll put the YouTube to work and see what we can find.
I think he's the monster. I think he's like 6'10", 350.
Is he really? Oh, no.
Wow.
Now we have to look this guy
Yeah.
up. My goodness. If he is that big, we need to see what's going on here. You got to have a guy like that checked for medicals, right? Like, can his knees hold up?
Yep.
Let's see here.
I
Tim,
think
you
he's
got
from
us do
British
some
Columbia.
digging there?
Yeah, I'll look it up for you. But I mean, if he's that big, it's kind of like Caleb Williams is huge. He's like 6'9" and 360 or whatever he was when they signed him as a undrafted guy. So maybe this is kind of the same route.
Caleb Jones, I think you meant.
Or Caleb Jones. I'm sorry. Caleb Williams.
He's got Caleb Williams on the brain. We're talking about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he is, goodness gracious, that's really interesting. Would love to see what that guy looks like on a football field. He's just that massive.
So what I'm seeing is 6'7", 352.
Cool. Yeah, that's a big human.
Yeah.
That is a large human. All right.
He's played left tackle and some left guard over the past few years up in Canada.
So maybe we'll do some homework here between this episode and next week and check out our guy Manu. But yeah, I gotta say I can't say anything really stands out to me as far as these visits go. I mean, it's pretty expected, right? A lot of DBs, a lot of tackles, and a few names that you would expect probably like linebacker, like Cooper and Wallace. So I think the thing to me that stands out the most is it seems like the names that they're most interested in at safety, according to the media at least, are further down the board, right? And we talked a lot about we have no idea what these GMs are thinking. So sometimes the media and the fans are way off base. But at least the way it looks, like Oladapo and some of these other guys, they're bringing guys in from lower on the board. Marty, what do you make of these 30 visits? Is there anybody that gets you excited?
Tim hit on a couple with me. Zach Zenter's one. Okay. I think if he does not break his leg, he's a second or third round pick. He was a very, very good football player. Mims also, Guyton also. One I want to throw out there that was not mentioned is Tanner Bortolini. He can play center and guard. So again, we're getting into the multiple positions on the O-line. And but he's a local kid, so I don't know if they'll take him. They have a history of not taking local kids.
That is unless they can get him undrafted, right? Isn't that where they got a couple of those guys a few years ago?
Yeah, I think right now Christian Welch is the only one. He's from Iola on the team, I believe.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so these are relevant, and we've talked about this in the last couple of years. The guys that come in for these 30 visits a lot of them are guys that get drafted. So it's important to keep your eyes on these, and they're not done. I think there's still several to go, but they're at least at the positions you would expect, which is encouraging. You're not seeing a lot of tight ends come in or anything like that. Not a lot of receivers, although we had the one receiver, Jermaine Burton, come through. So we'll see. We also speculated maybe they're bringing him in to learn more about the Alabama DBs. You just never know what they're up to with these visits. You never know.
And we've talked about this. Goody will bring in guys that he drafts, whereas Ted Thompson was just bringing in guys that he was signing as free agents after the draft. And to that point, last year they brought in, I believe it was 4 guys that they ended up drafting, and then a couple more that they signed as free agents as undrafted guys. So, some of these guys are probably going to end up Packers, whereas in the past it was like they're probably not going to draft them. They may sign them after the draft. So now Goody has kind of shown that he will draft these guys. It's not all smoke screens, I guess.
Yeah. No. So, well, we've spent enough time trying to figure out who they are going to take. It's time we have some fun, and let's talk about who we're not going to take. So I don't know that too many people are doing this right now. There's a whole lot of mock drafts going on. We're still not doing the mock draft thing. There's a lot of speculation going on, a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of these things. Like, what if Brock Bowers falls to 25? As much fun as that is to think about, I just don't think the GMs in the NFL are that dumb. So we gotta see a lot play out. But Tim, lead us off on this one. Who are you not taking if you're the GM?
So I made the mistake in 2019 of not wanting Rashawn Gary. Obviously, I was completely off on that, but that was like, don't pick him. There was no college production there or minimal college production there. Like, didn't see where they could play him on the edge. He was kind of too small to be inside. I just didn't want him. So I've stopped saying don't draft guys. And my answer, I know, isn't much of an answer, but within the first 4 rounds, don't take anybody who's not a highly tested athlete. So we've been talking, since we started talking draft prep about RAS scores. If they have a low RAS score, ignore them. Like you just need athletes, because the times that the Packers do, at least within the first 3 or 4 rounds, where they go outside their thresholds or they take guys who didn't test well, most of the time it doesn't work out. I know Jaden Reed was kind of outside of the thresholds, and obviously he's working out, but Jay Sternberger wasn't, Amari Rogers wasn't. So I just want them to take guys who are athletes, who qualify athletically. Don't reach, don't go outside your threshold, stay with what you do, because it's been proven that it works more often than it doesn't work. So more than specific guys, I could probably give you a few names, but more than specific guys, just do not take non-athletes within those first 4 rounds.
Fair enough. I think I have one player that I disagree with you on that which is Cam Kitchens, but his numbers say he's not an athlete, but his film does not say that. So, but you're generally right, man. And I think that you've heard Goody kind of talk about it a little bit, and they talk about rare athletes or rare players. And like a Christian Watson is a rare athlete, man. For somebody that big, moving that fast and being that explosive is just not an every year kind of thing. And as good as the receivers in this class are, none of them are his size, and not his. And obviously, they're as fast as he is, but he's just as fast as any of those folks, right? Maybe not Worthy. I don't know. We see what goes on past 40 yards there, because I think that's a big difference maker too. But the point is, you've got to look at rare capabilities, whether it's athleticism or just what they do on the field. And BJ Raji, I think, was a good example of that. And what Ted, he brought that up. They just don't make them like that very often. So those are the ones that I'd say these guys are looking to find, like you're saying, in that first 100 probably picks, which is interesting because it was pointed out today, I believe Rob Domofsky pointed this out, the Packers have not had this many picks in the top 100 since 2006 when Ted drafted A.J. Hawk. So that's pretty interesting. I didn't realize that. What an opportunity to take, an almost Super Bowl team, if I may, and inject it with that much more talent. I think that's a really exciting opportunity. But Marty, who are you not drafting, man?
Top of that list is Caleb Williams. But
we're gonna let the Bears have him.
Yeah. One guy that stood out to me, I'm not buying the hype on, is Tez Walker from North Carolina.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. He has straight line speed. His hands are not the greatest.
Okay.
And I'm just not buying the hype on him. From what I've seen, if you can't catch a ball, I don't care how fast you are.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen plenty of athletes, like exceptional athletes, go in the NFL and not do very well. So you definitely need more than that.
Another guy that I keep going back and forth with is Roger Rosengart from Washington. There's plays where he looks very good, and then there's a lot of plays where he is a top out there just spinning. The Michigan playoff game really comes to mind. He just got worked that whole game. Penix was running for his life. And then I watched the Senior Bowl. One-on-ones he did good, but then when they were going live and during the game, he was just spinning in circles out there. So he's another one I think I would avoid.
Yeah, man. I actually liked him earlier on and watched a little bit more, and I started seeing some of that, and I was like, I got to move on. I don't know what to make of this guy. I can't act like I'm some kind of expert. But he's an interesting one because there's some moments you're like, dang, that guy's a beast.
And I think he's only 20 or he just turned 21. He's a redshirt sophomore. I know that.
Yeah, and so that does put him in that
and
camp.
He tested really well.
Yeah, so that could be a Goody guy, especially if he can find him later in the draft, which he's been great at finding offensive talent or offensive line talent later in the draft.
Watching him, in college reminded me of Jason Spriggs, and that was a complete disaster.
Ooh.
So
That was that same class. That was that 06 class.
yeah, I'm not in for round 2 of that.
Well, I gotta say, and I don't know that this will be a very popular opinion, although it won't be the least popular opinion among Packers Twitter because they have a lot of them moved on from this guy because of his raw score. But Tyler Nubbin, I don't think I would draft. You know, and I spent a lot of time watching Cam Kitchens, no doubt. If you've listened at all, you've heard me fanboy about this guy. I think he's an excellent player. But I go back to Nubbin and I look at, you know, I went and looked at what's his highest graded game for 2013 on PFF, or 2023, excuse me, on PFF. And it was against Nebraska. He had a 91 PFF grade. It's like, all right, let's go see this thing. It's just not impressive. I think he had 2 interceptions, which, you know, beefed up that PFF score. But the rest of the game, there's a lot of plays where he leaves a lot to be desired. You know, there's some plays where you kind of hope he would get in and be more of a finisher, and he just kind of stands there and sees it happen. And there's other plays where he's out of position entirely and just doesn't get exposed for it. So I don't think I'm buying the hype on him. I think that he was a fun name and maybe even got a little bit of recognition, you know, because of one of his predecessors in Winfield. But, you know, I'm not buying him. Whereas I am a big fan of Cam Kitchens. I don't know where they should take him because, again, it's hard to guess what these GMs value and where they're going to go with what guys. But Cam Kitchens, the thing that stands out to me about him is his play recognition. And that was the thing that stood out to me about Nubbin is they're on different ends of that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Kitchens is lightning fast. He recognizes plays incredibly quick. Nubbin does not. There's a lot of times he guesses wrong, and there's a lot of times it takes too long for him to figure out what's going on. He can get caught up in play action. So that's one that may not be very popular, but he's one I would not draft. Caleb Williams is on my list. We're not drafting Caleb Williams, but that's, again, because we're going to let the Bears have him and, you know, keep doing their merry-go-round. But then, you know, any of the undersized receivers, any of these guys like a Malik Washington, looks like an excellent receiver. I just don't see the Packers taking a guy that's 5'8", you know, and that's where you come into the conversation again about exceptional athletes and you know, rare traits. The guy is good. Malik Washington looks great, runs phenomenal routes, makes plays, but he will eventually be limited by that size, and the Packers just don't need that. You know, you've already got a legitimate 4 deep right now, I think, at your receiver position. So if you're going to add to that group, you really need some exceptional traits. You know, that's why I've been a fan of A.D. Mitchell. But, yeah, so I think those are the biggest things that stand out to me about guys I'm not drafting. Some people may have taken T'Vondre Sweat off of their board. I am not doing that. I want that large mountain in the D-line. I think that would be amazing. Yeah, there we go. Marty and I were on the same team.
I'm with you on that.
And our friend Shraggy Yankelwitz earlier with the question also would love to see the Packers take a D-end. So not that he's a D-end, but he's in that same area of disruption. But you know, is there anybody else that we're missing here, like some controversial characters? You know, I don't know. Like, how about this? Because this has been a debate. Brock Bowers. If Brock Bowers somehow makes it to 25, are you taking him, Tim?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Look, they don't have a need for it, and I think Musgrave does a lot of the same things, but he's really good. He's the best tight end in the class, and you make it work. So you have 3 good tight ends. Figure it out, and he could be a bigger slot receiver where you could kind of take away any kind of blocking responsibility from him. I mean, you'd like him to be able to block a little bit.
I think he's a pretty good blocker, isn't he?
Yeah, for his size. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, you make them all interchangeable, and if he's just primarily a slot guy, a pass catcher, a matchup guy, like, just go ahead and do that. Like, you can really take advantage of his strengths. And I mean, they come out 3 tight end formations, and who's going to cover those guys? Like, hey, teams are going to have to play nickel against the 3 tight ends, and then you can run the ball. Like, it would just create so many incredible packages for LaFleur to come up with, and what he could design for the offense, having that chest piece out there. And, like, just, you know, give Jordan Love another weapon. He's the best tight end in the class. I would take him. I don't think it's going to happen realistically, but if if he was there, it would be controversial. I think Packer fans would kind of go crazy about it. But yeah, to me, I wouldn't think about it. I would take him.
Best player available at that point, I think, too,
Yeah.
right? Marty, you disagree?
Yeah.
No, I agree. He is the best player available at 25. I remember when they played Alabama in the national championship his freshman year, he was the best player on the field. He was an 18-year-old kid. I was like, who is this kid? He tore Alabama apart.
Yeah, and he's been on that team for a while. They've won some
they've
championships.
been talking about him for 3 years now.
Yeah.
How good he everybody waiting for him to come out and be eligible.
Yeah,
that's one of those. Don't overthink it. Like, and I saw the debate going around about if whether he makes it or not. Would you take him? I don't know if I'd take a tight end 3 there. It's like, just don't overthink that one. And we see injuries happen. Right, Musgrave went down.
Yeah.
Tight end's not a gentle position. There's a lot of violence at that position. So that would be a fascinating pick.
You could do so much with him. Look at San Fran with Juszczyk.
Oh,
they line him up everywhere. He's a nightmare. You can't put a linebacker on him, and if you put a D-back on him, he's going to run him over.
Yeah, and I think you could insert any of the tight ends and say the same thing about them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when you talk about having a 3 tight end set and then having to be worried about the other guys that also come out on the field, that's a lot of fun to think about. So, yeah, that one was a little bit of a fun debate that was going around earlier, but we can only imagine that Bowers would drop. I don't think NFL GMs are that dumb. So, all right, let's dive into the fun topic here, because this is the one that we have not participated in all offseason long. Everybody else has had their say on it. Nobody knows who's right until all this plays out. But let's talk about QBs, because we're not taking one until, at least when it matters. Mm-hmm. Don't need one. We can say that with confidence. So we can talk about this, and it doesn't mean a damn thing. But our Bears friends that, there might be 1 or 2 of them listening at least, they're deep in this debate. Now, you already mentioned it, Marty. They are facing a potential deja vu here. Now, obviously, Caleb Williams is the odds-on favorite for this pick, but Drake May is sitting there. It's like, could they really take another top 5 QB out of North Carolina? Yep. All right, let's start. Let's not get too out of control with Bears speculation, because we could do a whole episode on that. But Tim, kick us off here, man. What are your QB rankings?
So I know you guys don't like him, but I think he's the best quarterback in the class, and that's Caleb Williams. I would still take him first. Now, I have concerns about him. I think he could be kind of like Kyler Murray, which is real good quarterback, but not your top of the line, top tier kind of quarterback. I think he forced more things in 2023, but the offensive line was a disaster. They couldn't block, and the defense couldn't stop the 3 of us right now. Like, he didn't have a defense for his 2 years at USC. But he relies a little bit too much on everything being off script and getting outside the pocket and making plays, which is great, and he's really good at it. But if that's your best attribute, I have concerns about that. Like, can you be a timing quarterback? Because you're going to need to be able to do that. And can you throw consistently from the pocket? So that's a little bit of a concern. But I still think he's the best guy. I think he's got the most talent. I think he's got the most upside. So, yeah, it sucks he's going to go to the Bears, but I also think the Bears are going to screw him up like they do with every quarterback. So we shouldn't be too worried about it because they're screwed up. And after that, I like Drake May. I think he's kind of a Packers quarterback. Like, if they were up there, I think they would love him because he's big. He's got mobility. He's got the big arm. He's kind of like this raw. I mean, he's played in North Carolina, but I still feel he's kind of raw. Like, he's just a toolsy kind of quarterback that they seem to like. He's got a long way to go, and I think if Washington takes him or New England, I think it would be best if he sat for a year, but other than Green Bay, nobody sits their quarterbacks. So he's going to play right away, and I don't know if that's the best thing for him. I think he needs to sit and really work on his game. And then from there, Jaden Daniels. But with Daniels, he's skinny. And if you look at him in college, when he runs, it's incredible, but he's trying to run through guys. And if he does that in the NFL, he ain't going to last very long. He's just not built to do that. Yeah, but Richardson's 240. Daniels,
no, that's what I mean. He got broke, right? So
right. And
that
he got
guy's
hurt
getting
4 games in.
Yeah,
And you see what's happened in Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson doesn't try to be as physical as Daniels is.
Yeah.
And I think Daniels, too, looks to run a little too soon. Like if his first read's not there, he's taken off. And he shows hesitation throwing the ball over the middle. I think he's got a lot of tools. And where he was at Arizona to where he ended up being at LSU, he had tremendous growth. Like he played early, I think right as a freshman at Arizona State. Didn't look like an NFL prospect, but he got better. He got away from Herm Edwards in Arizona State, went to LSU. And yeah, he's got 2 first-round receivers, but he was really good. I mean, he carried that offense, even with those great receivers. I like him a lot. I don't know if he can get to be a progression quarterback where he looks beyond his first or second read. I worry about the lack of throwing down the middle of the field, the hesitation to do it, and then does he hold up with the durability? And then everybody seems to be loving J.J. McCarthy lately. And I think he's going to end up with the Vikings. I think they make a trade to get him. I think they're going to be their guy. That's why they got the second first-round pick to move up and get him. Or whoever the 4th quarterback is, I think that's who they're going to end up with. And I think it'll be McCarthy. But he's got tools. I don't get it. Like out of all the quarterbacks, I've probably seen him play the most just because he's at Michigan and seen a lot of Michigan games. Mm-hmm. He's a little skinnier. Like I know he bulked up for the offseason, so I worry about durability with him. And you don't see the consistency of the throws that he needs to make in the NFL. And I know they're a running team and they want to pound it and all that. But if he was really as good as he supposedly is, they would have let him throw the ball a little bit more than they did, no matter how good their running backs and their line were, because he had some receivers there. I know he's got tools and ability, but I don't see the upside of the first 3 guys that I do with J.J. McCarthy. I think, his ceiling is probably Kirk Cousins, which isn't bad. But I don't think he probably hits that ceiling. And I'm not scared if the Vikings take him at all. Like if he hits, great. I don't think he'll ever be one of the top, 5 quarterbacks, maybe even top 10. But I think he's got the ability to kind of be a Daniel Jones sort of quarterback. Kind of that Daniel Jones to Kirk Cousins range. Like there's tools there to work with, no doubt, but I don't get the hype that seems to be building with him over the last few weeks. Like I haven't seen it enough on film, and so if it was me, I would pass on him. I think the first 3 guys separate themselves from McCarthy and then whoever else you want to put next, whether it's Nix or Penix or whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's how I see it. I know you guys aren't as high on Caleb Williams, but to me, he's the best guy.
Marty, who's your top 5?
I don't even have a top 5. I got top 3 because I don't like Drake May either. He reminds me of Trubisky, and not just because he has the same uniform, but watching him play, like those 2 guys are identical to me. Jaden Daniels is my 1. Tim hit on pretty much everything that I would say, except I saw potential when he was at Arizona State as a freshman. Like there was something there. I mean, he didn't have a lot of talent around him, but there was something there. Then it's a huge drop off, and it's Bo Nix and Michael Penix for me. And if I was an Indiana Hoosier fan, I would be losing my mind that we let Penix just walk. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. After watching him make it to the national championship game, you got to really be sour about that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are my top 3. Nix, Penix, kind of coin flip either way. But to me, Jaden Daniels is number 1 for me.
Okay.
And there's a drop off.
Okay. So Williams isn't even in your top 3, huh?
I wouldn't touch him, so why would I rank him?
There we go.
Fair enough.
There we go. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, so I'll give a top 5. I've got Daniels at 1. He did what he did at LSU. Won a Heisman. And went out there and balled out. Like when you watch the film, I mean, he got that ball to some pretty great receivers, and you can ask, what's comes first, chicken or the egg, right? But those receivers, I mean, you got to get the ball to them, right? And that's where I kind of look at it like he did, man. Like this is he really dished out, and I'm not some QB expert, so for me it's just an eye test. Like I'm watching the guy. Does he look like a guy that one is comfortable making decisions as a quarterback, And 2, does he look like he has the ability to do what he decided to do? And I think he checks both of those boxes. He looks comfortable. He looks like he knows what he's doing. A field general, a guy that you want leading you. But I mean, he passes the eye test. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to give you some like deep QB insight. But for me, he passes the eye test. And then I give Caleb Williams my number 2, but that's based on potential. You know, you see a lot of really like great throws and stuff like that, and I want to believe it's real. You know, he did some damage at OU. My biggest problem with him, and a lot of people will probably disagree with me about this, he didn't win a bowl game at USC. Like, that is just problematic to me. Like, if you're that dude, you should win a big game. You know, and wins aren't a QB stat. I get it. But you have Lincoln Riley as your coach. You have all the resources in the world at USC. You're the dude. Like, how in what was it, 3 years at USC, wasn't it? Or was it 2 years? It was 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. How did you not do better? I mean, really, they were bad this last year. So there's something missing there for me. But yeah, I mean, the talent is undeniable. There's some throws he makes, you're just like, darn, like, wow. So yeah, I'll put him at number 2. If he goes to the Bears, I put my money on bust. You know, and that's not necessarily an indictment on Caleb Williams. I think it's kind of an indictment on both sides. You know, and the thing is, you know, we talked about Justin Fields here tonight. When you look at Justin Fields, the guy, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a flaw in his character, right? Every offseason, the Bears fans are showing all the videos and everything of him working out and, you know, getting all beefed up. And then he's got these moments, you know, sliding on the flooded field. And he seemed like he had the locker room. Seemed like he had leadership capabilities, just didn't have a knock on him as a bad dude. And not that Caleb Williams does, but Caleb Williams definitely has some controversial attention on him, and he seems to enjoy it. So that, to me, is an extra ingredient you got to deal with in developing a young man. But the Bears haven't demonstrated in over 100 years the ability to develop a quarterback. Why would they start now? They just failed. You know what I mean? Like, you just failed to do that. Why? Like, what makes me believe you can do it again? So I just think whoever the Bears go with, whether it's Williams or May or any of the other top guys, I don't think they're set up to develop a quarterback, you know, and they're going to put all that pressure on him. He's not going to have a complete squad around him, and it's just going to be this Groundhog Day for Bears fans. You know, Bears fans, if you're listening and this is pissing you off, jump in. I'd love to hear it, but I just don't see it. So that's where I'm at with that. But after Williams, so I got Daniels at top, Williams number 2. I like J.J. McCarthy at number 3. Again, some of it for me is the eye test. Some of it's, you know, what are you hearing from who? And a lot of people that know a thing or two about quarterbacks really like the guy. And that's where I'm like, I'm willing to outsource my knowledge to those folks and take their word for it. And he just, to me, seems like a guy who just, you know, again, kind of a victim of the system. I mean, they won a national championship doing what they're doing. And I hear you, Tim. It's like, if he's better, give him more opportunities. But they won a national championship doing what they did, you know? So it's like, it's hard to argue that, right? It's hard to say, well, go do something different when what you were doing got you the ultimate goal. So that's the way I look at that. And his own coach, and, you know, we'll see how this goes now and what the Chargers do. But his own coach said he thinks he's the best quarterback in this draft, you know, and take his words with a grain of salt, right? You know, but it's not nothing. So I do have him at number 3. I got Penix at 4, May at 5, and then I put Nix down there. I could probably even put Nix up above May. My thing is, and I guess I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here. With Nix, though, I just didn't feel like the Oregon offense was as good as it could have been if he was that dude. At the end of the day, it seemed like they came up short quite a bit. So that's why I put him towards the bottom of the pile. But, yeah, so it doesn't really matter because we don't need any of these guys. And if any of them fall, it would be interesting to see if the Packers try to take them as a value pick. They've done that before, second or third round. I would put a 0% chance on a first-round QB for sure. I think that there would be a riot outside of 1265 Lombardi. So I don't think that's happening. But, yeah, one of these guys could fall, and you could end up with one of these guys in the second or third round, depending on how Goot values them. I wouldn't say that there's any competition for Jordan Love. I'd say it's more of if you're old enough to remember, like an Aaron Brooks type situation. They get value out of these guys because apparently they're the only ones who know how to develop a quarterback.
Yeah. And the other scenario, I mean, maybe Penix or Knicks are there at 25, and there's a team that wants to jump up from the second round and trade up to 25, and you can make a trade back.
Money.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even get a second first-round pick next year.
Exactly, yeah, get a future pick for him. So that's a scenario, too, where somebody gets desperate to move up to 25.
No doubt. That one, for me, gets really interesting because I think that the talent available at 25, there's going to be, I think, more than one guy there who probably shouldn't be. Depending on the position that is, you might have some pretty high demand for that, which means the price goes up. We've seen Goot do that before, right? He did that in 2018 when he traded off the 14th pick. He ended up with a second pick in 2019, a second first-round pick, I should say. Still got Alexander, excellent pick, better pick than Marshawn Davenport, who the Saints took at 14. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if Goot is maneuvering like that, I trust him. I'm strapping in for the ride. Let's see what he does. I would be shocked if they don't have a first-round pick. So I think if there's any kind of trading around, you still end up with a first-round pick of some sort. I would be really shocked if you don't have a first-round pick. Just because, again, in this draft, you need quality over quantity. You don't need 11 picks in this draft, But, so, hey, we wanted to have some fun with this. Marty, you are a DB coach. We got an interesting DB class here, and the Packers are in need of a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts, man? Like, I mean, take this wherever you want. I don't know if you want to talk about who your top guys are, who you think the Packers might be most interested in taking or making a move for. I mean, what do you think about this DB class?
Yeah, as the consensus of Green Bay Nation is Cooper DeJean. I mean,
right.
That guy's a Swiss Army knife. You can do a lot of stuff on your defense with him. I hope he's there. I would be ecstatic if we took him. I don't think that'll happen.
Right. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I like Kool-Aid also. Something's going on with Stokes. I don't know what it is, but there's smoke there. Like something's going on. Like,
do you think it's like a David Bakhtiari thing where they're just not explaining the injury?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to guess on something, but there's just more to that story than that's being let out.
Right.
So I think Kool-Aid could step in for him, and between the two of them, you should get a full season. So
that's the way I look at it. And somebody was asking, if you do take a DB at 25, are you done with Stokes? And I think no, it's more of you're stacking the deck in your favor, and best case scenario, Stokes is okay, comes back to 2021 form, and you're 4 or 5 deep at DB or cornerback at least. Worst case scenario, you got insurance that he doesn't pan out, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And don't leave yourself short like they did last. Like you're down to Corey Ballantyne, Carrington. Like they held up okay, but you don't want to live in that world. Like if Corey Ballantyne makes your team and he's your 5th corner, cool. But
if he's your 3rd corner, not
if
cool.
He's right. If he's the next guy up with Stokes getting hurt or whatever, or Jair getting hurt again, who's been hurt 2 of the last 3 years. Like,
yeah,
I see some people saying corner's not that big of a need. I don't get it. Like Jair's been hurt, Stokes has been hurt. Ballantyne, as nice as he looked, he was a 7th round pick. So yeah, you hope he gets better, but there's no guarantee of that. There's not a great pedigree there.
Right.
And then at slot corner, we've talked about Nixon a lot. Like he's got a long way to go, and we're hoping that Hafley's defense will make the difference for Nixon. But if it doesn't, you have a big need at slot too. So I think corner's a huge need.
Well, we saw what Goody thinks about Nixon. He likes Nixon at that slot position.
Yeah. So, but I think you're betting on the new scheme helping him. I don't see what, like, if you're basing that on what he did last year, I don't see how you could count on him to be your unchallenged starter at slot corner. Like,
Yeah,
really
no,
hoping.
I wouldn't say that. Unchallenged for sure not.
But yeah, like you need insurance there in case he doesn't fit well in the slot in this new scheme, or somebody to push him. And then, like, you guys are talking about Stokes, like you can't count on him. Like, I hope he comes back and he's healthy and he plays like he did as a rookie. But even if you go back to a second year, the first half of the year, he was not playing good before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And now he's been hurt for a year and a half. So how can you just hope that, he's going to be healthy this year and we're not going to touch cornerback like it? I think that would be a huge mistake and really setting yourself up to be back to starting, Corey Ballantyne again next year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I kind of, we're almost at the point where you need to kind of treat cornerback like you've treated O-line. Like you just need to grab a couple every year. You don't know what to expect. Guys get hurt, but I definitely would be ecstatic about a cornerback at 25. They seem to be pretty good at evaluating DBs coming out. Not perfect, but pretty damn good. Better than Ted. Ted wasn't great at it. Ted was lucky to find Tramon Williams and Sam Shields in the recycle bin. But I'm really curious to see what this new scheme does. Marty, what do you think about this? Are you pretty excited to see Hafley's scheme?
Not really. I mean,
Really?
for me, watching, everybody runs a 4-2. I don't care what they put on their paper, what they run. That's what everybody runs.
Okay.
So I think big picture, I don't think much is going to change for me personally. A couple pieces might get moved around, but yeah, you still need an in the box safety that's going to be technically your weak side linebacker.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm looking forward to a little bit more sensible scheming, less Preston Smith covering receiver one in the slot, less prevent zone on 3rd and short, stuff like that. The aggression is what I'm hoping to see increase. I do think that we're in an age now where there's not really a big, and it's been talked about. There's obviously not a huge impact on the base scheme, whether 3-4, 4-3, all that kind of stuff. Because you really are going to call what the game dictates. What is the offense doing, and what do you need to do to respond? But for me, and one of the things that I loved the most about Dom Capers, who was, I guess, really the last successful defensive coordinator in GB, I loved his in-game calls, because when he was in his prime, man, he was dealing. He was throwing stuff in that psycho package. He was throwing stuff out there that just crossed an offensive coordinator's eyeballs. Just like, good Lord, like, what is happening here? And he seemed to be dialed in and have the right calls at the right times, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, you're really guessing in a lot of ways, but you're watching enough film and playing the percentages enough to kind of guess right. But, you just haven't seen that. And obviously Joe Barry, the biggest knock on him was that he just was, he was playing scared essentially, right? Everybody, those two over the top, don't get beat deep, and that to me was unsettling, because then you're kind of like a kid who's learning how to play Madden. You're just sort of calling that base coverage and hoping for the best. And instead of thinking about, all right, well, here's what the offense is doing, so here's what we could do to counter that, or to like blow that up, or confuse something, anything like that. That's like more of the psychological side of things. Joe Barry seemed to want nothing to do with, and that's where the things that are said about Hafley make me excited, because he seems like an aggressive dude that could be rather unpredictable, throw an offense off, when in crunch time. So that's what I'm excited about. I don't know that necessarily it's the scheme, but maybe more the attitude.
Yeah, and to that point, Marty, you talked about Cooper DeJean. if the Joe Barry is still the defensive coordinator, I really wouldn't want them to draft Cooper DeJean, because I don't think they would maximize his potential. I think they put him at one spot and just leave him there. Whereas with a creative defensive coordinator, which is hopefully Hafley, he's like the matchup piece that you can move around each week. Like one week he can play outside corner against the bigger receivers. He could play slot. He can play safety. Like he's going to keep an offensive coordinator guessing during the week, in game. You can match him on certain players. Like he's that chess piece. Whereas with Barry, he would have been in one spot and that would have been it. We wouldn't have seen the creativity. Because to me, and I don't know, maybe you see the same thing, maybe you don't, but DeJean is kind of like this Swiss Army knife where you can't just stick him at outside corner. He could probably get by doing that, but like you'd almost be wasting some of his talents and his versatility. You want to move him all over the field.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I personally, my guy is Quinyon Mitchell. I would love to see them make a move for him. I think he is a fascinating player, great athlete, looks really aggressive, but would love to see him in that defense just flying around.
So one of the guys I think that they, I think he came up for a visit too, and we didn't even talk about him, was Kool-Aid McKinstry from Bama. And Marty mentioned. So he tested pretty well. He didn't test great athletically, but he was testing on a broken foot, which they discovered at the combine, and he still went through his pro day and did all the runs and everything, which is pretty incredible. So maybe he's a better athlete than what his number showed, but like he just seems like he would be a really solid, like upper level number 2 corner, maybe max out as a pretty decent number 1 corner opposite Jair. Like he's not super flashy and he doesn't run a 4.2 or whatever, but they left him on an island a lot against some good receivers at Bama, and he would get beat occasionally, but he won his share, and he would match up and play physical. He seems like he's a smart DB. Saban coached him. He coaches DBs. You know, that's his position. He just seems kind of like a sneaky, like maybe the Packers would take him at 25 if he's there, and I think it seems like he's going to be there. I don't know. The more – this drags on to the draft, the more I see of him, the more I kind of like him.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of ready for this whole process to be over, right? Because then once you get picked and, okay, here's the guys. These are the guys. Let's go dig into them and find reasons to be excited about them. But, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me, this DB class in general, because it seems like one of the less clear classes. Usually DBs coming out, the ranking is pretty clear, at least at the top. And this one, to me, there's a lot. And it's not for lack of talent, right? There's some good guys coming out. And, Kool-Aid, we're seeing now the receivers that he was going up against in the SEC, man. We're talking about these LSU receivers. You got Leggett out there at South Carolina as well. There's some really good receivers that are coming out. And he's been covering them and holding his own. But, yeah, that's one that has been pretty exciting. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this draft could go for the Packers and be very exciting. I think that's the part that we should be, I guess, more just like in general, like throw it up and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Don't be like the Bills fans that booed when Josh Allen was drafted. Gosh, that's such an entertaining clip. But, so I don't know. Are there any other guys that we haven't talked enough about?
I got 2. One's going to be a second round pick for sure. The other one, I would say late second, maybe early 4th. Jaden Hicks from Washington State. He's going to be – that kid is unbelievable. And he does everything for that defense. So we were talking about Cooper DeJean. That's the same thing. Like, you can put that kid a linebacker. He can do so much. Then the other one that I like is Dadrion Taylor Demerson from Texas Tech. He had 10 career interceptions, and he is all over the field.
Yeah, there have been some folks talking about him recently too. So that one, that's a good one. I haven't watched any of his films, so that's one that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and I mean, Marty, Hicks seems like he'd be a really nice compliment to McKinney, because McKinney can play the post and he can kind of come down flying in the box and be the enforcer. Yeah, that would be. I like Hicks a lot too, and I think he fits really well with McKinney and what they want to do on defense.
Yeah, and honestly, I think they come away with at least 2 safeties in this draft. I don't know where, but that seems like kind of like they did at tight end last year. Now, we've said it. Goot might have been looking forward at this tight end class, going, we don't want to be stuck with that one. Let's get what we can out of this one. But yeah, I mean, he's also got a history of taking Georgia Bulldogs. There's a couple of Georgia safeties in this class. Don't look too bad. Tyke Smith definitely seems like the kind of guy that Goot would take. He's a great athlete. Very interesting. And I don't know if you even are familiar with this name, Marty. You might be, but Trey Taylor from Air Force. What do you have you heard of him?
I know who he is. Yeah.
He won the Thorpe Award.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's wild to me that the Thorpe Award winner is getting so little coverage. I mean, you wouldn't even know the guy was around.
Yeah. Yeah, I have watched a lot of film on him, so I don't really have a vote, I guess.
Fair enough. No, I haven't watched a lot. I watched a little. He looks good. I mean, but I guess there is the element that it's Air Force, so the competition isn't as good as maybe some other schools. But he's also Ed Reed's nephew, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
There's talk about pedigree, Tim.
Yeah.
That's about as good as it gets as far as safeties go. Almost anyway. So, no, there's a lot of characters in this draft, and not necessarily the star power, but it's gonna, I think, be fun to watch who the Packers take, and we'll get to dive into them. But no, I mean, if you had to make a big prediction, Marty, what's your most reliable prediction about what the Packers will do in this draft? Could be anything under the sun. Hey, they will pick at 25.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, they have 11 draft picks. They don't have 11 roster spots. So I think they're going up between 10 and 15. And if I had to put money on it, I would say Brian Thomas.
Oh, damn.
Wow.
Yep.
That would be interesting. And he does, man, he meets that qualification of a rare player, a rare athlete.
They need a day one impact player. We're not developing. He's coming out and he's producing.
Oh yeah, no, he is a day one production machine wherever he goes, unless there's just no quarterback. But that would be wild, man. I would not be mad about it. I did talk a little bit about how I think that he is less likely for them to take, just because he seems more like your plug-in X receiver. And since they seem to have that in Watson and Dobbs and their X and their Z, I thought they might be more likely to take a guy who's a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife than Thomas. But Thomas is a beast. He is a monster. And in most draft classes would probably be receiver 1.
Yeah.
So interesting, man. Okay. Tim, what about you, man? You got any predictions you want to throw out there for this draft?
I think they're going to go heavy on the offensive line and heavy on the secondary. Probably 3 offensive linemen, maybe even more than that, and at least a couple defensive backs, between corners and safeties. And I'll also say it wouldn't surprise me if they take a defensive lineman fairly early, within the first 2 days of the draft. Doesn't seem like it's a huge need, but they're bringing some guys in for visits. It seems like they like them. Kenny Clark, TJ Slayton are going in the last year of their contracts. Wyatt, you're going to have to decide this time next year whether you're picking up his option for a 5th year. So it's kind of a Packers situation where they're looking ahead, whereas everybody's looking what are their needs right now. They always kind of look ahead. Wouldn't surprise me if they take a defensive lineman pretty early. Yeah,
I would love that. I would love another D lineman. The D line is good, and I feel like you plug another beast in there, it's gonna take a big step up. But no, my prediction would be I think they come out of this draft with at least 2 safeties, and it's gonna be. I've said it before, very, very difficult for them to come out of this draft without a receiver. It's very deep, very heavy at the top, just an incredible receiver class, and at some point they're going to be on the board, and best player available is going to be a receiver. So Let's hit some questions here. We got a few folks that have jumped into the comments. Chris is one. Did y'all hear they stopped serving meat at the Viking Stadium? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Good for you, Vikings fans. Oh, man. This was an episode we really planned on ripping on the Bears, but the Vikings have made it way too easy. I can't bring myself to pay $50 for a bug burger, but I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys are either of you vegan and interested in the vegan cuisine? I didn't think so. No hate for the vegans. If you are, good for you. But let me have a burger or a hot dog or something at my game. Damn.
Wasn't that's the stadium where the birds fly into it? It's the bird killing stadium, right?
Is it really? Is
That's
it because
right.
it's so black?
Well, it's because when they built it, the outside there was so much glass. I think they've changed it or something. But birds were flying into it, and yeah, I don't know if that's still the case, but it definitely was when they first built it.
The Vikings are just the worst.
Yep.
They are.
Just the worst. Shout out Chris, man. Great comment.
So many
there.
ways.
And then R Showers thinks that all the decent corners are gone by 75. We shall see. That's why you play the game, right? You got to get in the draft and find out what's there. But, finding Valentine in the 7th round last year was a heck of a pick, man. So I like our chances with our GM. Bourbon Bongs. Sweet name. Dylan probably won't make the final 53. This is an interesting one because I think it depends on the draft. But if this draft falls a certain way, yeah, I think the guy or guys, one or two, you never know what they'll do. You take more than one running back, it gets even harder for A.J. Dillon. But I definitely think that there are draft picks they could make that would cause Dillon not to make the 53. Is that outrageous?
No, I mean, the contract they gave him really didn't guarantee him much of anything.
No.
So if they take somebody that can jump right in and has a really good camp, shows that they're ready to contribute right away, and Dillon either gets hurt or he just doesn't have a good camp, and maybe Emmanuel Wilson steps up too, or another back, whatever it may be. Yeah, I think it's possible. But yeah, I think somebody's got to take his job. I think he, as of now, pencil him in. But a lot of it, like you said, depends on who they draft and how quickly they'd be able to come in and contribute.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it could be interesting. Maybe if Jalen Wright falls to the right spot, he could be a really exciting piece in the offense. All right, and then we got Tyler. Wait, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say, I think you're going to his question. This was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I'm going to Tyler here. So first year in a while, the Packers didn't take a day 3 offensive lineman. Do you think that's coming back to bite them now this year in terms of depth? The way I would answer that really depends on how this draft goes, because I really think that there's some great offensive line depth in this draft across the line, interior and tackle. So I don't know that I would say came back to bite them, because, I mean, if you look at the beginning of the 2023 season, they were pretty deep at offensive line. I mean, really David Bakhtiari was the biggest question mark, but, based on what we knew then, it was looking pretty good. And, some things happen. Some guys don't pan out. I don't know what happened with our boy Yosh Nijman, but, so I don't know. I don't think that it's coming back to bite them yet, but they have to come out of this draft with some O-linemen. We talked about last week, what does a successful draft look like for the Packers this year? I think you have to come out of here with multiple offensive linemen for it to be successful, for sure. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think you need multiple. I think you need at least 3. And as far as the question goes, I think somewhat it's hurting them, because they should have been looking ahead, knowing that Runyon's going in his last year, Yosh was going in his last year, Bakhtiari, even though they were counting on him, you really didn't know what he was going to turn out to be. So I think in some ways, depth-wise, I mean, they have Luke Tenuta and Caleb Jones. They've been on the roster for 2 years. They seem to like those guys. They haven't played in 2 years, but they're still around. So I guess that's part of the depth that they do like. But yeah, I think it's hurt them a little bit, but let's see what they come out of this draft with, how many guys and how quickly they can step in and contribute.
Yeah. What do you think, Marty?
Yeah, I think they got to reload. 2 guys I like, I'm going to drop their names out. Dominic Pooney from Kansas.
Yes.
He had 38 career starts. He can play all 5 positions.
Yeah.
So we're right back to Zach Tom and Elgin Jenkins.
Yep.
Elgin Jenkins was a center at Mississippi State also. So
Yeah, no, he's had
like
some
these
good
guys.
center snaps. I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. And then the other one, Zach Frazier from West Virginia.
Yep.
He had 46 career starts, and on top of it, I like this even more. He was a 4-time state heavyweight champion wrestler.
Ooh, that's a big deal.
Don't they usually like wrestler guys?
Yes.
They usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Except Reed
wrestling.
Humphrey.
Right. Don't go there.
People don't
I
forget.
love Pooney. You mentioned Pooney. I love Pooney. To me, he's like, if they don't get Graham Barton, get Pooney.
He did come in for a visit, didn't he? Isn't he one of their 30 visits?
I didn't see, but maybe he
Yeah, I
did.
didn't see him either.
Yeah.
I think he did.
But he was a
We'll have to
Senior
double
Bowl
check
guy
that.
too, and they like
Mhm.
Senior Bowl guys
Yep.
that go down there, and the versatility. Yeah, I like Pooney a lot.
And then we hear you are on, just saying that the cornerback draft is weak. Definitely could be. I think that there's, the verdict is out on that. I think there's some potential with it. There's some guys that are not the day one or even maybe day two guys that are still like pretty intriguing athletes, intriguing prospects. There's other positions that are much, much deeper than cornerback in this draft for sure. But it's just interesting to see how it plays out, man. And then, Tyler comes back and he says that he thinks tight end is a sneaky draft need. It is. We talked about it, right? The guys weren't healthy all season last year. I mean, Kraft stayed healthy, but once Musgrave went down, things got a little bit shaky there as far as your tight end depth goes. I would say as far as the tight end position goes, there's actually some fun pieces that we did talk about last week that are rather unique guys. The guy out of Illinois that's basically an offensive tackle that can run routes. Just a 270-pound, plus tight end, massive dude. He's your Mercedes Lewis type dude that's going to get in there, mostly be a good tight end blocker, but can still sneak out and do some damage. I think he'd be a fun one. And Jaheim Bell out of Florida State is one that also looks like he could fit in really well. Marty, you said Kyle Juszczyk. Jaheim Bell's kind of like that, right? Like a little bit undersized for a tight end, but still a good athlete and a guy that you could just sort of sneak around in the offense, and the defense is going to have some trouble with him. So, I don't know, Marty, what do you think of the tight end position? Like, is this class just as abysmal? We hit on Brock Bowers, but we didn't go beyond that.
I just think it's really top heavy. The guy day 3 that I like is Isaac Rex from BYU. You were talking about the Mount Union kid the other day who caught 30 touchdowns. Rex caught 24.
Really?
And I think he's 6'6". Like he's
24
a
in one
player.
season?
No, in his career.
Okay. No.
So-
Wayne Ruby caught 30 in
Oh,
one
31.
season.
Oh, yeah.
In the 2022 season. But
That's
anyway,
fast.
24 in a career for a tight end is
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
You said BYU?
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that one I hadn't looked much at him. But those are the types that I feel like could come out of this draft right now that are sort of under the radar but still do well in the NFL. I mean, that actually happens a lot at tight end. Yeah, guys kind of sneak up on you.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then let's see here. Getting back through these comments, R came back and said, keep thinking we end up with 2 Georgia DBs and 2 South Dakota O-linemen. I think that as well. I think Georgia DBs are a solid bet when Goot is drafting. And the South Dakota O-linemen look really good.
McCormick.
It's South Dakota. It's hard to say because of the talent, but they look really good. I don't think that it's a stretch to think that those guys could play well in the NFL.
He had 57 straight starts. That is insane.
Man, I don't care what level you're playing. That's
Correct.
impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's see here. And then Frazier, Tyler says he likes Frazier, very short. Pooney likes a lot. Yep, Barton's another one. He's up there with DeJean, man. That's a Packers Twitter favorite right now. And I don't know, at the beginning of this process, Barton wasn't, a huge like top 20 prospect or anything like that. He's one of those that has kind of gained steam as it's gone along. So I don't know where he falls, but he definitely makes sense in the right spot. I don't know that 25 is the right spot. But what do you guys think about Barton? Tim, where do you, this is one we've talked about a few times. Like, where do you think he falls?
I think he's a first round guy, and I like him a lot. He's a lot of the things the Packers like an offensive lineman he has. I just think, like, if they don't view him as being able to play tackle, and most people don't, they think he's a center or a guard, then I wonder if the Packers spend a first round pick on him. I think they would love him in the second round. That's kind of where they would like a versatile guy. First round, they take, the premier positions, and a center or guard really isn't that. But other than that, like, if they think he can get by in some games and play tackle, but he's going to settle inside, the testing numbers, the experience, the production, like, he checks a lot of boxes for the Packers. So I could see them doing that. The only thing that, would hold me back is if they don't view him as a left tackle or even a right tackle, would they take somebody in the first round like that? They may, and that would be kind of off of their tendencies. But as far as the player goes, I think he's really good. I think he's going to go in the first round. I think he's going to be there somewhere in that range of maybe, 20 to 30. I think there's a decent chance he's there on the board. It's possible it's definitely possible he goes before him, but I think there's at least a decent chance he's there for them, and wouldn't surprise me if he was the pick. Like him a lot, and I think he gives you, the ability to come in and compete at right guard with Sean Ryan, or eventually take Josh Myers' job at center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looks like an excellent player. I just don't know that he's a guy that they take at 25. And I think you have to have the context of the depth of the draft, right? And we've named a few of them, but there's multiple guys that have that versatility that can take them across the O-line positions. And they're going to be available on day 2, Day 3 may get a little bit more thin. But yeah, there's going to be a lot available on day 2. So I don't know that day 1 they need to address that and make that pick there. Especially because it all comes down to who falls, right? We're sitting here talking about some of these guys that could potentially fall. You just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, I don't see them using that pick on that position just because of the depth in general. And that's where it's like, well, then where does Barton go? If he's a first round guy, I don't think he ends up a Packer. Marty, what do you think?
Yeah, to me, he's kind of on that end of day 1, top 5 pick of day 2. So I could see them the Packers taking their 41 pick, going back up, I don't know, we'll just say 34, and getting him at that point.
I could see that.
Yeah,
I could definitely see that. And then how it's fallen. You have a night to sort of shuffle the deck and make some moves. But yeah, and then so this last one I want to get to, because we are getting a little bit long in the podcast, but this I thought was an interesting topic. We might have to cover even more next week. Twofold here, though. Do you give Kenny Clark a third contract, and how much are we paying Love? Now, I think you're irresponsible if you don't give Kenny Clark a third contract. How much are you paying Love? I don't know. Whatever he wants. Pay him whatever
it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Write the check. I don't know. I don't know. Are you guys giving the third contract to Kenny Clark?
I would have done it like a month ago. And you see like all these defensive tackles are getting paid, so he's going to get paid too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Buckner just got paid.
Yeah, a lot of them this offseason. I would pay him. I have no problems with it. He's still 28 years old. He'll be 29 and when the contract actually starts. Yeah. But if you look at the Packers, other than quarterbacks, they rarely give out a third contract.
Yeah.
And so I know there's been talk that they want to sign him, and maybe that's true, but I think reality is they want to sign him at their number, which is probably a lot lower than what Kenny's going to want. So it sucks, but I'm preparing myself that he won't be back after 2024. I don't see them right now doing that. I think they should, and I really hope they do it, but just based on their history that we've seen over the years, I don't think they give him a third contract.
I don't know. He seems like a guy that could be the exception. What do you think,
I
Marty?
hope so.
Yeah, I would give him an extension also. But I will say, caution to the wind. The last one they gave the third contract to, David Bakhtiari, did not work out. So
It's true.
that's pretty
Yeah.
fresh still.
But you give that third contract every time.
Yeah.
I mean,
But, I
David
mean, he's-
Bakhtiari, if he
he's
doesn't
playing
get
at a high
hurt,
level.
we're talking about a Hall of Fame tackle.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe still talking about a Hall of Fame
Mhm.
tackle.
yeah.
But
But Clark's playing at a high level still, so I don't see a drop off coming anytime soon from him.
yeah, that if he's not, I don't see a drop off. I mean, that's actually been a position where there is some longevity. You've seen guys play pretty well into their 30s at that interior position. I don't know. He doesn't seem like a guy that's going to command like top of the market. I think he just wants to get paid, for being a solid dude the last few years. Been an excellent leader in the locker room. And when he's at his best, he plays all pro level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope they give him the third contract. I mean, from a locker room perspective, for me, he's up there with an Aaron Jones, and he may not be very vocal about it or as visible, but just I don't know. Having watched the guy over time, like that's one of those dudes that when he speaks in the locker room, you listen up, and you want that. I don't care if he's 35 years old. I want that guy. I don't want him, and shout out to Art Showers. I don't want him for $100 million. That seems steep. And I don't know if you're talking. No, you're saying that's Kenny Clark. Now, when we're talking about Jordan Love and his contract, whatever it takes. Top of the market, keep him. Is there a limit here? Like, is there any scenario where you guys think that he doesn't come to an agreement with the Packers? It can't be, right?
No, they're re-signing him, and it'll be top 10 or top 5 quarterback money, and that's fine. Like whatever it takes, and just remember, like he's going to sign for what he signs, and it'll be sticker shock. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And then a few months later, there's going to be a bunch of quarterbacks signing deals that are past that. Like they can just that's the cycle that it's been. Like all these guys are getting paid $50 million plus, so whatever it takes. And I'm not concerned. I think they're going to get it done. They've come out and said we're getting, that's a priority. So when they do that, when they're that open about it, it means it's really something that, Goody and Russ Ball want to get done. And I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah. And I, having watched with a front row seat how the Cowboys handled Dak Prescott, sign him yesterday. The Cowboys waited a year too late with Dak Prescott, and it cost them $10 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it. Dak would have been a lot better at that, 30 to 35 million. And instead they had to pay him north of 40. So it just, get him signed, get him locked up. Maybe there's sticker shock now, but first of all, Jordan Love, there's no question. There were definitely questions about Dak Prescott when he got his big contract. I don't think there's any question about Jordan Love. He couldn't have played any better in his first season. I mean, he's already played better than any quarterback in over 100 years of Bears history. Let's be clear about that, right? So, yeah, I don't see it not getting done. But there's an interesting conversation to be had around Kenny Clark's contract. How much, our points out could be 23 a year. DeForest Buckner, I think, was it like 20, 22 a year? It is a 2-year contract. But I think it was like 20 or 22, something like that. And I would expect him to get paid more than Buckner, but I could be wrong. So yeah, maybe that's something we got to track a little closer, but I don't know that we'll hear anything about a Kenny Clark contract before a Jordan Love contract. You think?
Probably not. No,
I don't think we would.
I doubt it. I think Jordan Love's going to be the big one, and then it'll be the next one. Yeah.
It's got to be top priority.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Anyway, a great conversation for sure. We're going to keep having it every week here on the Packers Weekly Podcast. But Marty, appreciate you joining us tonight, man.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. It's open. Come on back. We're going to have plenty to talk about after the draft when we've got some new guys to dive into and see how they're going to fit into the roster. But yeah, man, appreciate you coming in and giving
thank
us
you
some
very
knowledge
much
here. Had a good time with you, man. And, everybody that hung out with us tonight, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, or X, Twix. I've heard somebody say. Maybe we'll start saying Twix. Facebook, Instagram, all of that. Spike that like button for us. That does a lot for us, and it helps us. And please subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go, Pack, go.